Hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name is Connor, and today we're going to be talking about JReg's political schizophrenia. JReg released a darkly beautiful video about frameworks. I deeply appreciated. I kind of fell in love with the video. I thought it was fantastic. And I basically watched it recently and thought it was pure genius. And one of the things that struck me about the video is that the far left and the far right agree on major problems of the day, and them chiefly being social, economic, and spiritual alienation. They just have different solutions to that problem. The far left appeals to community, collective unity, and improving material conditions. It is largely a godless religion of materialism, in my view. The far right appeals to ethnic community, collective unity, improving material conditions for an in-group, and a spiritual revival to spur on their adherents. And I'm not saying that the far right is more godly than the far left, but I think some factions in the far right would make that argument and actually appeal to that identity pretty strongly. So, but both of these ideologies have as a motivating core a sense of nihilism and listlessness and a desire for meaning and codification. So JReg's video captures this perfectly. So let's watch it together, and I will pause occasionally to share what I believe are the deeper parts of the video that we should be taking away from it. So without further ado, since his video is already 15 minutes long and I'm going to be adding to it, let's get into it.
Hey, Dad.
Yes, son?
I've been feeling a bit sick recently. Actually, a little bit depressed. What do you do when you're down?
Depressed? Son, have you ever heard the tale of the little bitch boy?
The little bitch boy? What's that?
The little bitch boy was a slave to his emotions, son. Whenever he felt bad or sad, he would stew in his emotions and say that he was depressed. The little bitch boy would stay depressed because he would whine about his problems instead of solving them. The little bitch boy was not an effective man. However, the little bitch boy's father was an effective man. For the little bitch boy's ancestors had something known as a framework, but the little bitch boy grew up in a world where there was no framework.
A framework?
A way of viewing the world, son. Everything is a framework. In some things, everything is a framework, and some frameworks work better for some people. The little bitch boy had the worst framework of all, which is to say, none.
Am I the little bitch boy, Dad?
This is beautiful. And the reason why it is because a lot of the political problems that we have that a lot of people agree on is actually, in my view, a lack of masculine leadership in our older generation. So for either our dads weren't present, or our dads felt equally listless, our dads felt equally spiritually demoralized, or they were holding on to spiritual frameworks and historical frameworks that the younger generation could not identify to or identify with. So a lot of us younger kids, I say younger kids even though I'm in my 30s now, we turned to our fathers looking for guidance, and they either had no guidance or they had guidance that seemed out of step with the modern world. And kind of what was terrible about the thousands, as much as I viewed the thousands as a very liberating time from a social perspective to do drugs and fornicate and have fun and all that kind of stuff, it came with a deep pessimism and nihilism about almost everything. So hedonism was the philosophy du jour, the framework. And basically that framework was that there were no frameworks, and that's something that postmodernism has continued to blow apart, leaving this entire generational gap where people basically have no system. They either have broken systems that their fathers and their parents left to them that they can't follow anymore, or they can only haphazardly follow, or they have no system at all. And I'm not trying to blame anybody, but if I had to blame somebody, I would say it's all of our lack of ability to grapple with our reality, in which religion doesn't seem to be the solution that it once was. Spirituality is very nebulous and doesn't allow us all to engage with the world on an equal playing field. And now we are the victims of people who have maintained strong intellectual and spiritual frameworks, and we're feeling listless and adrift.
What? No, I love you, son, and I wouldn't disparage you. I'm not sure what you are. I was the little bitch boy, son.
You were the little bitch boy?
Yes, son. And I hated being the little bitch boy, so I turned to my father for advice as to what to do. And so I did what he did. I took all of my feelings and I bottled them up. I shoved them deep down inside until I could feel them rotting inside of me.
So you're saying men should ignore their emotions and women should be
No, son,
controlled?
please, keep listening. In following my father's advice, I realized that it wasn't quite working, and so I changed my framework. I started being emotionally honest with about half of my feelings, and dismissing and shoving away the other half, almost at random, really.
And that's what I should do. If I feel depressed, I should bottle it up, but only sometimes. Just randomly. Yeah, that's a great idea.
All right. And this is actually what leftists would probably call a component of toxic masculinity. The need of men and boys to constantly be strong except for when they're not. And actually, I would almost unironically advocate for this position. And I think it's a position that we've seen in our fathers as they've lost their parents and as they've dealt with the trials and tribulations of the world, something that we're going through as well as we get older, is that men are expected to be strong spiritually, physically, mentally, all that kind of stuff. And so we have to be strong because that's a social role that we've been kind of boxed into. We are expected of it from our partners. We are expected of it from our children. We have to hold our shit together for everybody because almost nobody else seems to hold their shit together. And I get that that's perhaps, sexist and playing into toxic masculinity, but, somebody has to hold the fort down, right? Bills have to get paid. People have to work. People have to eat, all that kind of stuff. So if you have a anti-capitalist critique, that's fine. But I'm just saying that there's a reason why things are the way that they are. So, but with this newer generation, I would say, at least for me, just speaking for me, because I know there's plenty of people who would actually view me as weak. I feel what I feel when I feel it, and generally I express that emotion because I actually think that bottling up emotion is actually quite toxic and harmful for yourself because your inability to articulate how you truly feel about a situation just stays in there anyways, and it rots at you and it rots your brain. So this kind of we've all seen this when our parents lost their parents. At the funeral, they would get drunk and they would cry and they would sob and they would fall apart, and you could actually see the human being within them. But for vast stretches of time throughout adulthood, you would just see this cold, stoic, pseudo-apathetic, strong exterior, not really realizing that these are human beings too, that like us, we will grow into these forms and perhaps adopt their behaviors, toxic or not. And that's what I feel is deeply beautiful about, intentional or not, JReg being sick for this video, is that it actually shows both physically and aesthetically for the video how sick our own frameworks and messages that we receive from our parents are.
No, son. Again, you're missing my point. I don't know what's right for you, but what ended up working for me was being strong most of the time and weak sometimes. And I could differentiate when to be strong and when to be weak based off of how I felt when I was randomly dismissing and acknowledging my emotions earlier.
Yeah, Dad, that is far from a perfect framework, and you still haven't told me what to do.
When I was doing that, I was working out for myself when I should be strong and when I should be weak. And in doing that, I found a framework
This is
that worked out for
fucking
me.
stupid.
This hits hard, okay? There's reasons why people do what they do, and there's reasons why our parents did what they did, and their parents did what they did, and their parents did what they did, and it's basically a sign of environment and tradition, and it's a combination of both. And the cynicism and pessimism of the modern generation is in seeing all the negativity and the repressed feelings and the toxicness of the frameworks of the previous generations. But the truth is that leaves us nowhere because there's no perfect ideology that's going to save us or save us from ourselves. So when I heard JReg say this is fucking stupid, I love my brother, and if he listens to this, know that I love you while I'm saying this. I hear his exact voice when JReg says this is fucking stupid. And I am a naturally agreeable fella, so I'm always looking for the opportunity. I'm always looking for the solution. I'm always looking for the way that I can make something work for myself. Frameworks. I'm looking for functional frameworks, and even if you give me a dysfunctional framework, I'll try to figure it out. You can critique anything to death, anything, any system of belief, any political institution, any religious institution, any person. You can critique them until they die and find flaws aplenty. But the truth is, if you don't have a solution that's better, then your criticism means nothing.
All of this is fucking stupid, son. I'm already growing tired of the cadence of my voice. It's a lot harder to try to find out how.
What you need to do, son, is you need to
The dad
find
was
a framework
temporarily
that works
weak.
for you. It can be any framework. You can pick one at random, really. What matters is that if you don't have a framework, you need to start following a framework and commit to it, like you would commit to a woman.
It's very easy to just call something stupid. Are you saying women are frameworks? Why are you so hung
Everything
up
is
on
a
this?
framework, son.
I think he's about to get into this again, but the dad was temporarily weak and kind of showed his own weakness, but then also comes back to being authoritative and discussing how to interact with ideologies. And the son's skepticism is still showing through, where he doesn't want to believe that it really is as imperfect as temporarily committing and engaging to different ideas the same way that you would date a woman. And he's about to problematize that analogy out of the sheer pessimism and cynicism inherent in this generation. It's fucking beautiful. I love JReg. I think he's a scripting genius.
People are frameworks. Politics is frameworks. Morality is frameworks. All frameworks have flaws, but that's not the point. The point is that any framework is better than no framework at all.
Any framework is better than no framework? Okay, I barely know what you're even talking about when you say framework, but I'm pretty sure I can think of a few worldviews that are objectively worse than other worldviews. Find out how to express a thought on your own.
But if you believe and commit to that terrible framework and try to act it out, if
will
you don't
find out
pick
for
a
yourself
framework, then you'll
that
never
it is
find
terrible.
anything out about anything. And you'll also never have to commit to anything, which is appealing, which is why nihilism won, but is also why
See,
nihilism
it's won
is a
so
dead
well,
end.
I can't even...
So perfect. So perfect. This is why we have an entire generation of aged children, 40-year-olds who want to live by themselves and play video games and jack off until they die. It is because non-commitment bears no responsibility and no consequence. But here's a Jordan Peterson perspective. You are going to die, and you have to pick the hill that you're going to die on. So it's best to imperfectly engage with ideologies and imperfectly engage with speech and thought and belief and spirituality, find out what works and what doesn't, and then from there, codify yourself as a human being. The nihilism and cynicism and pessimism of a lot of leftists, and I use cynicism, I understand that's like cynical is about like people being negative. Pessimism is just negativity in general. That's more what I mean. That's what the Jordan Peterson perspective is that you just need to try. You need to orient yourself towards an ideal, and you need to strive towards it, and you are going to fail and you are going to modify, but through that you grow. And what a lot of people perhaps straw man about the left is that they always come up with excuses for why people can't strive, or why people can't grow, or why people can't change, or why people can't succeed. Some of those might be valid points, but other ones are excuses for people who are not trying. So let's continue, because the fucking gorgeous script.
What I say is that passive nihilism is a dead end. Humans tend to be creatures can't of know belief. everything, and faith fills in the Passive gaps. nihilism is a framework in so much as an anti-framework can be a framework.
I'm already growing tired.
This is why
of this
atheism
video,
fails. It's not
I'm not
a
even sure
codified belief.
really
It's just the absence
what I'm
of
trying to
belief.
say. But I
If
have
you never
faith,
attempt
son.
to follow a framework, then you, from your own experience, will know nothing. All you'll have to do is follow the advice of other people whose frameworks are stronger than you, who have tried if you to want to commit be able to to their think for frameworks. yourself, instead of only being able to follow advice, you're going to have to commit to a framework in the same way you would commit to a woman.
Ooh, you keep saying that. It's not a good look. It's not a good aesthetic that you've chosen as an example here.
When I met your mother, I never
Unproductive
thought that she would be the perfect
problematization.
woman for me. Realistically, there is an infinite number of possible women that I could have, and all of them would have had their pros and cons. But the point isn't to find. I knew your mother was a good choice, but I also knew that she was not. You can find a perfect woman, but without commitment, and you can be perfectly committed. But if you're committed to a terrible woman, then that won't matter either.
You are far too hung up on women as frameworks,
Son,
Dad.
See, and this is fucking beautiful again, because the younger person is so hung up on the woke bullshit criticism of the metaphor that they're not actually following the metaphor. And the metaphor being that if you have a terrible relationship with a good woman, I guess, it doesn't matter that you're in that relationship if the relationship is dysfunctional, it doesn't fit you. If you are in a good relationship with a bad woman, but she drags you down and she's terrible, and we could use partner, right? If you wanted to make this more progressive, more PC. If you're in a bad relationship with a good person, it doesn't matter. If you're in a good relationship with a bad person, it doesn't matter. If you're in a bad relationship with a bad person, that's even worse. And that's how we have to see our ideologies. That's how we have to see our engagement with the world, is there's ways to become committed and entrenched to things that drag us down, and there's ways to be free of that. But the truth is that complete freedom, complete absence of commitment is not going to save you, and complete commitment to bad things is not going to save you. There's so many layers here of depth, so much beautiful shit being articulated so quickly. I can't believe you fit this all into 15 minutes, and I am sorry for making you watch something that's more than 15 minutes, but god damn is this shit good.
It is painfully easy to deconstruct as you are doing now. It is much more difficult to posit something and have it be challenged. I'm using
That's the
life
problem with
partners as an
postmodernism.
example, but you could say the same with jobs or hobbies or friends. My point is that it's a lot harder to believe than to disbelieve, but in believing, you make yourself stronger, or at the very least, more defined in a certain direction. Faith makes you more defined. Commitment makes you more defined. Yes, you can be defined by negative frameworks, that's definitely possible. But if underlying your frameworks there is a meta framework that wants to find the best framework, then I have faith that you will orient yourself towards the one that works best for you. The point is to not pick the proper framework that works for you on your first try, but to orient yourself towards the best framework that works for you based off of trial and error.
This is a Peter Sodian perspective. People believe unless they have a perfect game plan, they should not execute. That is incorrect. You need to set small, medium, and long-term goals, and you need to strive towards them. The people who sit on couches and smoke pot and never try anything, but they're super fucking smart, but they say, oh, I could have been a doctor, I could have been a lawyer, I could have been a this, I could have been a that, and then they have regrets later in life. The truth is that they could have started med school or started being a doctor, realized it was a pain in the ass, and then gone in a different, more productive direction. They could have done the same thing for lawyer. They could have done the same thing for cop. They could have done the same thing for so many things. And so many people, I know I'm being sexist, right? But men live lives of quiet desperation. So many people live lives of quiet desperation out of passivity. So they don't go on adventures. They don't learn things about themselves. They don't learn things about the world. They don't learn things about the humanity or psychology or any of that kind of stuff because they're scared to. They know they have the potential to, but they're unwilling to take the first step. And the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You have to be willing to go out on adventures first in order to find out who you are. And chances are your adventures are not going to match your fantasies of your adventures. And through that, you will learn what you like and what you don't like. And that is the lived human experience. So if you have spent your entire life in one town with a dead-end job, smoking pot, and you have all these fantasies of all these adventures that you want to go on, but you can't take the first step, you are still going to die. You are still going to get older. Disease is still going to take you. Your commitment and your cynicism and your pessimism and your criticism of other people is not going to stop the slow march of time. So what you have to do in order to become a better person is you have to engage with the world. I fucking love this video so much. God damn it.
Yep.
Do you ever define freedom?
No. This conversation isn't making me feel any better. It sounds like you're just wordily dismissing my feelings.
That's what it feels like.
Framework about frameworks is just another framework, right? Like, why do you waste so much time thinking about this stuff? Why couldn't you just give me some normal advice? Maybe I'm trying to work some
Because
things
life
out
is
here
complicated
myself,
and hard.
And yeah, I think saying I've thought about this too much is a fair point. But within the context of this conversation, you have asked me for my thoughts. And now I'm going to give them to you. You wouldn't be here if you weren't at least interested in them.
A fourth wall break is not clever anymore, Dad. You have to get with...
Fuck the fourth wall break. We look to our parents, we look to our adults, we look to our supervisors for leadership, and when we don't get it, we get fucking depressed. And when our leaders imperfectly relay information to us, we still have to be willing to take it and digest it. And whether you learn a positive lesson, meaning you're going to replicate their behavior, or if you learn a negative lesson that you're not going to replicate that behavior, you still have to be willing to seek out the wisdom of your superiors. Growth is important in a human life. I know that's obvious, but fuck me, do not a lot of people take advantage.
With the times, jeez.
But this one right now is to me. I'm aware of that's what matters, and yet I choose the construction out of the deconstructed
I could say
parts.
that there is no
that
point
is the
to any of
reconstruction.
this.
Or I could say, and perhaps
that there is
faith in this
some
point will make there will be a point.
Well, what if I don't want to be defined? What if I don't want to play by the rules of a framework, huh? What if I want to just remain an amorphous blob, ever-changing, impossible to pin down or criticize?
That's adolescence. That's Twitter. That's grown children. That's 50-year-old children. They think by having Peter Pan syndrome and never growing up, they will avoid the commitment and danger of responsibility. But the truth is that time moves on, and so does mortality. So non-commitment to any ideology is still a commitment to an end. Big oof.
Don't forget impossible to love, son. This is the attempt to reconstruct the deconstruct. We must choose to make sense of things ourselves, or else we will be possessed by a framework that is stronger than our own.
I think I get it, though I still have the suspicion here that this could be easily interpreted as terrible advice.
It's not exactly advice, my son. It is meta-advice. Be open to changing your mind, but not so open that you throw away a good woman, and not so closed that you hold on to a bad one.
Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to play this game.
Having no framework.
Fear and existential dread. Immaturity in the face of life's challenges, and cynicism and pessimism about the ideologies and history that came before us. This is the emotional and mental status of the nihilists of the millennial and Zoomer generation. This emotion right here. Fuck, this hits hard.
You can't choose to not play the game. If you don't actively choose to adopt a framework, then one will actively choose to adopt you.
You're not my biological son.
In terms of this depression, if you don't choose to have a framework about this issue, then this issue will have a framework that is the status quo, and you will be dependent on pills for the rest of your life. The status quo works very well for some people, but it does not work well for everyone. And that is why the status quo must be actively chosen and not passively accepted.
So, the core of what you're saying here, underneath all these words, is just I shouldn't be on pills. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily,
No.
son. Just because something is accepted and amplified by the status quo does not mean that it is right for everyone. An office job works for some people, and it doesn't work.
Neoliberalism and neoconservatism are the active dueling identities of the Western world, and they are failing monumentally to our standards of what we expect out of our world. That's not to say that other things are better. Fascism, in my mind, would be much worse. Communism, in my mind, would be much worse. But just because that's true doesn't mean that neoliberalism and neoconservatism aren't good for some people and horrifically terrible for others. Probably one of the reasons why I prefer the modern status quo is because it's good for me. I have a good job. My bills are paid. My family is healthy. I don't have much of a retirement, and my medical coverage sucks, but I'm still getting by, and my family is still healthy, which is part of the reason why I defend the status quo over some unknown and frankly historically terrible ideology.
Work for others. Kids and a wife work for some people, and it doesn't work for others. These
Fascism works for fascists. Communism works for communists.
People are those who have passively and unwittingly adopted frameworks that work against their own interests.
Oh, that's why this conversation is on a politics channel, right?
Right, son. The status quo is not really our enemy, because the status quo is still a framework. Our enemy is the apathy that props up the framework. The status quo is the sickness that infects those who don't have the framework and replaces the passive anti-framework with the active dominant framework. People who think that they're bucking the system by choosing not to adopt a framework are actively propping it up by being possessed by it. Our enemy is not the sickness, but the diseased. The infection of the status quo is not a fault of the status quo. It is a fault of frameworks. Frameworks infect. Frameworks are diseases. Advice you can't choose not to be diseased. You must pick your disease. Whether you like it or not, disease is already run through your head. You must pick one. You are already hopelessly sick. You will live that disease.
Jordan Peterson, you are going to die. You have to die on a hill. You just get to pick which hill.
You are already hopelessly sick. You are already hopelessly sick. If our disease was the status quo, then we would still be infecting those who claim to not have frameworks. Thus, we do not blame the status quo, we blame the victims of the status quo disease. But none of this is really about politics. It never has been about politics. This conversation or this channel, let's look at it another way. In order to make art, you need to have a framework. Art is the expression of a framework. Emotional communication of frameworks. You'll never make art if you do not accept a framework, but if you accept any framework and start making art about that, then you will know how to make art.
This hit hard for me because I had a whole bunch of friends who moved to New York and they made like bohemian art about living in New York and the big adventure and the dirty railways, but this like pseudo-romantic thing, and that does not appeal to me at all. There was kind of like this like nihilism and simultaneous like spiritual nihilism, material degradation, and engagement with what to them was a very exciting and busy world. To me, it looks like living in a rat cage and pretending to be artistic. Now, that's a little mean, fair enough, but you know, the guy whose artwork I'm critiquing or not enjoying, he's kind of a mean person as well, so it's okay. Whereas to me, the art that appeals to me is kind of like classical art, arches, churches, you know, paintings of knights, paintings of warriors, paintings of damsels. And it's because I personally have adopted an ideological framework that does say that I do come from a long and storied history, that architecture and art and symmetry and function and you know, like the sign function and you know, the golden rule and all that kind of stuff, all of those things are worth creating and admiring. Somebody would see that as horrifically constrained, but to me it's actually quite beautiful. I know I'm oversharing and dragging out the video, but just bear with me. There's a museum in Orlando called the Morse Museum. It's dedicated to Louis Comfort Tiffany. It's Art Nouveau. It's classical art styles updated for the 19th century. Google it. Google the Byzantine Chapel. Google Louis Comfort Tiffany in general. Seriously, some of the my favorite shit that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I am not somebody who's like overly sentimental, but I found that style and appeal amazing. I loved it. And I'm kind of a dark and serious guy. Moving on.
Then you will change your framework and make different art.
But Dad, let's be real. You don't have a framework. You don't make art about having a framework. You make art about not having a framework. You make art about being passively consumed by stronger frameworks.
That's a fair interpretation, son, but you can also look at it as the attempt to orient myself towards a genuine framework.
An exercise for the schizotypal. Schizotypal? So this is just advice for the mentally ill then?
We're all mentally ill now, son. What happens when the frameworks dissolve? Everyone is mentally ill now, son. Culturally, we are going through the same process.
We're going through the same process of disintegration and reintegration.
Schizotypals
we wrestle with. They're
probably why we should start listening to them.
Deeply
son.
Creatures.
And don't you get started on romanticization of mental illnesses. If one medicates away the symptoms of sickness, it becomes a lot more difficult to articulate sickness now, doesn't it, son? And one must articulate a problem before a solution. That's
Yes,
a fair
the
interpretation,
sickness
son.
is
But you can
the
look at it as a
cold,
genuine
it's the
attempt to
sickness
orient
is
oneself
the
towards the
framework,
proper
the
framework,
sickness
just
is
by
the
trying
illness
them all
of
out.
the mental
What
health.
else are you supposed to do?
All right, I've got it. I figured out the core of your advice.
I don't know if he's being dark and nihilistic about it, but it seems like he's trying to articulate all of the extremist ideologies of his day as a schizophrenic and probably naturally agreeable person like I am, where I try to see the perspectives of everybody. And he's doing that to attempt to find the better ideology. It's just not working.
You want me to talk about my feelings at random and just ignore half of them, but take half of them very seriously.
Yes.
Have we reached the conclusion to this conversation?
No, son. That's just generally the path I took. What I want you to do is find a framework that you think will work for you. And then I want you to commit to it and work within it. Whether it ends up being the one you die with isn't important. What's important is that by adopting it and working within it, you are learning.
Huh, okay, I think I can do that.
I hope you can, my son. So I've been sick for a while now, and it's why the only video I've produced in the last 2 weeks has been 30 seconds long. But I've also been sick for a while now. I still want to talk to you, because I have faith that me talking to you is still going to be important. Because it is important to me. Because when I look at you, when I see what I've made, I see something beautiful, and I lose sight of beauty too easy. And all this talk of frameworks and meta advice melts away in the face of beauty, and you stop wondering if you're a meta-modern man and just start being a man. All this talk and overthought and meditation on medication on medication, all of that melts away in the face of beauty. Because
This is a very weird video to be saying this, but I'm gonna say it. This is parenthood. This is having a child. This is trying to rear somebody else. This is trying to mentor somebody else. As terrifying and scary and weird and dark as the world is, when you have a child, as I do, and you try to advocate on their well-being, all of your anxieties and your fears and all that kind of stuff, they don't go away, but it crystallizes and it clarifies, and you have a purpose, and your purpose is the betterment of an exterior human being. This is why I get very frustrated with people who don't want children. If you don't want children, you do you. I don't particularly give a shit. But I think having a child is actually one of the biggest experiences that a human being can undergo as a human being. And having someone that you give a shit about, in this case, JReg is talking about his audience, and admiring the people who are striving to find deeper knowledge, the people who are striving for better ideology, the people who are striving to understand the world, and he admires that in the people who watches his own content. At least that's my read on it. That's the kind of relationship you have with a child. That's the kind of relationship you have with your child, where you're trying to raise them and teach them and get them to start thinking and how to think and critically think and learn from themselves. And I'm not going to be there forever, but you give them the things from you that are functional and dysfunctional. You give that information to them and you hope that they're better for it. And by doing that, some of your own anxiety, some of your own fear, some of your own depression, some of your own sense of rudderlessness is anchored by your attempt to raise, mentor, and guide another human being. It's fucking incredible. I love it, and I fucking love this video.
because in you I see pride. And it's not even pride in myself. I'm glad that I set you on this path, but I don't take credit for the path. It's rewarding to see how you've grown, and I hope we can grow together.
It's rewarding to see how you've grown, and I hope we can grow together. Fuck. That's parenthood. That's parenthood. Taking your flaws, taking your good side, giving it to another human being, and trying to be there for them as they grow up with you, and knowing that you cannot be there all the time. And that one day, you're not going to be there at all.
I need to eat some chicken soup.
I don't think we need to watch his him eating chicken soup. But again, JReg, he could come out as a neo-Nazi tomorrow. I don't think he is. I think he's a centrist. I think he's an insane person. I think he's a brilliant person, and I think he's just trying to articulate the most extreme ideologies of our day and the most extreme perspectives of our day in an attempt to grapple with reality and actually find truth in a better ideology, as he articulated in this video. Whether or not he actually does that is a different thing. But holy shit, do I love this video. Holy shit, does it hit hard. I absolutely love it. I hope you guys hung in there with me in order to do the React content. If you do like the React content, you like something that's a little bit more engaging with the world and not just me ranting into a camera for 20 minutes about my perspectives, we can absolutely do it. We can do this for a variety of things, movie clips, pop culture, political channels, whatever. I'm definitely down for this, along with the other style of content that we've done. So anyways, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I sincerely appreciate you. Like, share, subscribe, dislike all that YouTube bullshit. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye. Ooh.